Greetings, everybody. Welcome to this very special, very remote episode of Broadcast to Post, at-home production for live events. I'm Jeff Sengpil, KeyCode Media's Chief Technologist. Today, we're going to see two brief presentations from two of the leading manufacturers in remote production solutions. First up is going to be LiveU, presenting their wireless video transmission products that are helping broadcasters and productions connect hosts, news anchors, and guests into their master control room from anywhere with a cellular or Wi-Fi connection. Their solutions have been battle-tested by professional sports and broadcasters for years, but have now become even more important for any production trying to continue working during stay-at-home orders. After that, we'll bring on Vimeo to discuss how they've made it possible to turn any computer with an internet connection into a professional video switcher, connecting all your video feeds from anywhere, integrating motion graphics, guest speakers, RTMP and NDI inputs, while simultaneously streaming to all your social media channels and/or baseband television stations. We're then going to bring on our panel of broadcast, production, marketing communications, and university video professionals to discuss how they've adapted over this last month producing live video content at home. So let's get to it. Please remember throughout this broadcast to chat on social media or tweet using the hashtag @HomeLive. Our production specialist will be standing by to answer your questions in real time. So let's get to it. Starting with LiveU at Home production, here's George Klippel.
Hey, thanks, KeyCode. My name is George Klippel with LiveU. I'm the Director of Channel Sales. And before we jump into our at-home production workflow explanation, let me talk to you a little bit about who LiveU is and what we do. So LiveU is the proven experts in live video solutions. We've got over 4,000 end user customers out there with 20,000 units globally, producing tons of content every single year and month. And we're the driving force behind 4K HEVC live video transmissions for every vertical you can imagine: sports, news, live events, and much, much more. Our award-winning product portfolio includes portable encoders like our LU600 and LU300 HEVC units, our LU600 4K units, our decoders like our LU2000 and 4000, vehicle and fixed encoders, even our software solutions like our LU Smart app for your iPhone and Android. Everything in LiveU's world is controlled by a web-based application we call LiveU Central. It's web-based, so you can access any of our products from anywhere around the world and control those products from setting delay, starting and stopping recording, etc. Now, for some of you who may or may not know about the bonded workflow, this is basically what it is. You connect a field unit or one of the encoders to a camera output or the output of a switcher, and that could be SDI or HDMI, and you essentially are bonding that signal using all of the 4G or 3G LTE carriers, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile. You can even use Wi-Fi or Ethernet, BGAN, you name it. And we create a big fat pipe and send that video over the internet to a receiver. In our case, it's a LU2000 server or an LU4000 4K server. And those servers can spit out NDI. We're native NDI compliant with our servers, or SDI into a broadcast environment. Or we can even go to a cloud server and send out RTMP sources to a mobile device or CDN of your choice. So that's really how the cellular bonded workflow works in a LiveU environment. One of the things that LiveU has that we like to refer to as the LiveU Advantage is LRT, or LiveU Reliable Transport. It does packet ordering, dynamic forward error correction, acknowledge and resend, and adaptive bitrate encoding. Really what this is all about is automatic resiliency and high quality video that keeps your video and audio in sync at all times, even when network bandwidth is fluctuating. And this is one of the exclusive things about LiveU that sets our product apart from others. But today, we're really here to talk about wireless at-home production. And over the last 24 months or so, this has really become one of the biggest things in our industry. Whether you're doing sports, whether you're doing regular production, it doesn't really matter. But in particular in sports, wireless at-home production has really taken off. Some people call it REMI, but we here at LiveU call it wireless at-home production. You may know this as a traditional production setup. This slide kind of shows you what a traditional production setup looks like. You have cameras out in the field. They're typically going to a production truck or sat truck or even a fly pack. You're running hard lines to cameras. And you have all these associated costs with this, including travel, etc. And that's what has happened in the past. People are used to this. This is what you've seen from time to time. So wireless at-home remote productions for LiveU is all about producing multi-camera live events from centralized studio control room instead of on-site production using satellite trucks. So it's complete wireless synchronization of multiple cameras, no need for high-speed connectivity on site. You don't have to run miles of camera cables. You can take advantage of existing in-house control rooms, and you save money and travel costs. That's really what it is in its essence. So when you look at it from how the setup goes, you could take advantage of your at-home production facility and the personnel in your control room. So what you need is a server with enough internet bandwidth to receive each video signal in your production control room. So usually this is in your home, this is in your control room, and then you're going to send your camera people on location with the LiveU backpacks. Our LiveU precision timing ensures all the packs are synchronized to the same delay and arrive back to your server in sync, and you switch them live like you were there. So we have two-way comms with our audio connect, and even our video return option if you have on-site talent is available for this. So it's truly a remote at-home production environment, saving money on travel cost, saving money on setup, saving money on personnel that have to go there, and you're taking advantage of all of the things that you have in your facility already there. The nice thing about this setup is it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg to get into it. A starter setup really could be simple as 2 cameras. One static camera, maybe one camera operator in the field for cutaways and moving the camera around, and maybe you have just one person operating a switcher in the back. They could be the producer, director, and TD, right? So if you had, say, a TriCaster or something and just a one camera person, again, a 2-person starter setup is all you need, and you're doing wireless at-home production. You could also go more advanced and do a 4-person setup or even more and have 4 camera operators, a producer, director, TD, maybe replay person, all individual positions. So you can make it more elaborate if you want to. It all just depends on the type of environment that you want to produce. But in every case, you're going to be saving money and time based on a traditional setup where you'd bring everything on site. So I'd like to take a minute and show you an example of a wireless at-home production setup we did that really shows you the benefits of doing this type of a production.
The Molokai Hawaii is the world's oldest 6-man outrigger canoe race, 67 years. It's the World Championships. This is where crews from all over the world come to find out how good they are. It's 41 miles from the island of Molokai across the Kaiwi Channel to the island of Oahu. About 10 years ago, the president of the organization came to us and they said they would really like us to try and do this live. This was in a time where 4G didn't exist. About 3 years after that, the technology became better. We're partners with Time Warner Cable, and that was when we did the first real live TV broadcast from the channel. This year, we're partnering up with LiveU Technologies to see what their equipment can do in the channel. You know, adaptive bitrate, 4G technologies, bonding up to 12 modems into one feed. It's just, we're in the middle of the ocean, we're in the middle of nowhere, and we're pulling signals where other people cannot even use their cell phones. This race is broadcast live in Hawaii. It is rebroadcast live in Tahiti. It's a worldwide webcast. It's a social media cast. The viewership for this race is tremendous.
Our role with Ocean Paddler is to manage all of those bonded cell connections from the start line to the finish line, all the way through the race.
The big challenge with this particular show is that the boats themselves, there's a lot of waves out there, there's a lot of motion and movement. We wanted to make it as seamless as possible for them. So we control everything in the control room.
I, on the field, don't have to worry about too much. I can just plug it in, turn it on. I don't have to try to figure out and troubleshoot problems. Like, they're able to work on it while I'm concentrating on getting the shot down here.
So this is one of the great things about LU Central, LiveU's control platform, is that we can talk to all those remote units from a single control location, which means that we don't have to have a lot of tech personnel out in the field. LiveU's reliable transport technology, the LRT, has been a game changer. Regardless of how data conditions fluctuate, you know that the reliability of your signal is always going to be top-notch. And the support that we receive 24/7 from LiveU is absolutely stellar. That's been something that's been a lifesaver for us.
You've had many people out there in the community that have often wondered what actually happens during a channel. The next thing to experiencing it is seeing it live, and because of TV, through social media, you can actually feel it and get a sense of the challenge that exists, and it's just broadens the involvement in the sport far beyond just the paddler.
Now we get to bring more people in, more people can appreciate it, more people can see paddlers from all over the world, their families too, get to be a part of this as well. And so that inclusion, I think, is a beautiful thing.
Having LiveU on our side this year is tremendous, and we're driving the Ferrari of the industry.
So to finish up, LiveU's wireless at-home production it's a complete solution first and foremost. It has the portable transmission units. You can have tally lights, video return, and intercom if you want, everything you need to produce remotely. It's a huge cost savings for you because you're not deploying anything to the field other than a camera person with a backpack. Everything else is staying at home in your control room, in your location. You get to do more productions because the existing equipment is not moving around. You're not paying shipping costs. You're not shipping it around. It's not getting damaged. All the personnel that you have in your facility are staying on location, so it allows you to produce and cover more events. The quality of the video is higher because you're using our bonded and our LRT reliable, high-quality video transmission at much lower cost. And finally, the flexibility. The system easily scales by adding more field units and receivers, which are the output servers, much more so than getting more satellite trucks and trying to do those types of things than you would think. That's about all I had. I'll see you shortly on the panel. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, George. From wireless video transmission, we're now going to move to a master control room in the cloud. No wiring, no adapters, and no need for racks of hardware. Let's hand it off to Vimeo Enterprise, showcasing their remote live production offering. Take it away, James Page with Vimeo.
Thanks, Matt. Hello to everybody at home. My name's James Page. I'm the Director of Business Development for Live Productions at Vimeo. So what I want to talk to everybody today quickly is about Vimeo Enterprise. Everybody watching probably knows Vimeo. We started as a consumer brand 16 years ago, famous for being a clutter-free, ad-free, high-quality player that you can maintain your brand with because you can white label us on your own website if you want to. So we have over 90 million creators and businesses on the platform. Over 1 million of those are paid subscribers. And as you can see from those statistics, we have grown a lot over the years. What we did at the end of 2019 was add a enterprise tier to Vimeo. And what that does is it gives you unlimited viewership of your VOD assets and your live streams, multiple live streams, and gives you all the toolkits of Vimeo Live as well as the traditional VOD platform. So how does Vimeo Enterprise differ? Well, not only do we have the usual beautiful player that everybody's used to, it was the first HD video player on the internet. We also now support 4K. Same easy to use consumer grade interface for everybody, so you have that beautiful clutter-free white label experience. But we also now support SSO security. So what that means is you can add authentication to selected content so that you can protect it behind your own organization. This is a much level better of security than, say, putting a password on a video. We also support ECDN. ECDN is basically a way of preserving your inbound pipe if you're in an organization with a local network and a lot of people on it. We also support live closed captioning, and most interestingly, I think, the user level analytics on the content. So you can see who's watching, where they're watching from, country, state, even down to the city metro. What platforms they're watching on, how long they're engaged for, what kind of devices they're using. Really gives you some good insight to your audience. But what we're going to focus on today is a little feature in studio software that comes free with a Vimeo Enterprise account, and it's a feature called Remote Interview. And what it allows you to do is bring in remote contributors, either on a laptop, into your live productions with no software install. Brilliant piece of technology that just runs in the browser that lets you bring people into your productions remotely. So if you're running studio on Windows or Mac and using network cameras and network sources, or even running studio in the cloud, this allows you to to run a complete remote production with people disparate all over the world. You could have somebody running graphics in a different tab, somebody doing audience interaction in another browser in another part of the world. This is truly decentralized production, and we can roll that demo now.
You can add a live webcam or desktop source from another location into your studio production. This is called remote guests and is a helpful solution when trying to produce a virtual event. Guests will need an internet connection, Google Chrome, a webcam, and a microphone connected to their computer. To invite remote guests, navigate to the Inputs tab. Select Add Input, Remote Guests, and Add Remote Guests. A Guest tab will open. Within this panel there are two tabs, Invite and Chat. When Invite is selected, you will see a guest link which you can copy to your clipboard and send to your guests via email or a messaging app. You can add up to 5 guests. This guest link will remain constant with your studio project unless you click Reset Guest Link. Note that different projects will have different URLs. When the guest receives the link, they should open it in Google Chrome on a computer. Opening the link will bring the guest to the guest lobby. If this is the guest's first time opening the page, Google Chrome will request permission to access their camera and microphone. All of these permissions should be allowed. Once all devices are allowed, the guest can enter their name and click Join to connect to the studio session. When a guest has joined, they will see their camera feed in the bottom right corner overlaying the program output. They will also see a broadcast preview notification and hear program audio. They also have access to the internal chat with the host and all connected guests. Guests can access the chat by clicking the expand arrow in the upper right corner of their portal. Guests can choose to share their screen rather than their webcam by clicking the Share Screen button in the upper right corner. This is useful if the guest is giving a presentation or demonstration on their computer. This will open a Chrome window, allowing them to choose between a full desktop screen, an application window, or a specific tab in Google Chrome. Once they click Share, their webcam input will be replaced by the selected screen source. In Studio, you will see your guests appear under the Guest tab after they have joined the studio session. You can add any individual guest as an input to your multi-view by clicking the corresponding Add as Input button. Their audio will also become available in the audio mixer. When you have more than one guest available, you can add each of them as individual inputs. You can also quickly create a gallery view graphics overlay directly from the Guest tab by clicking the Add as GFX button. This will by default include all guests plus the first input in Studio in a single picture-in-picture graphic. You can then switch in your graphics overlay using the corresponding GFX controls in the upper right corner of the Studio interface. Audio from all available inputs will come into program alongside it. When a guest is switched into program either individually or part of a group, they will see a red on-air indicator in the upper left corner, letting them know that they are live. To open the internal chat with your guests, select the Chat tab on the left side of the panel. You can disconnect a guest from Studio by navigating to the Guest tab, hovering your cursor over their image, and clicking the trash can icon. The guest will receive a notification that the host has ended their session.
Thanks, James. And thanks to both LiveU and Vimeo for showing us a look at their product presentations. As you can tell, we're now transitioning to our live Zoom panel discussion with customers utilizing remote live production solutions right now. Let's start with introducing the panel. For each panelist, I'd like you to tell us what you do, and most importantly, what you've been doing in the last month to keep your productions alive during the stay-at-home order. Sean Wyburn of TD Ameritrade Network, you're up.
Awesome. So I'm the chief engineer here at TD Ameritrade Network, and just quickly, TD Ameritrade Network's a 9-hour-and-a-half day talking markets. Most people may not have heard of us, OTT Network. But what I've been doing over the past month is logistically trying to figure out how to get 95% of our workforce that's running our network at home, whether that's the talent, the production staff, editors, producers, And logistically, I think what was our problem was we had 25 talent that we had to figure out how to get home and do it quickly. And we had about 2-day notice. So we ended up, having multiple meetings trying to figure out what we ended up doing. But we ended up going with LiveU Smart. I don't know if you guys have heard of LiveU Smart, but LiveU Smart is similar to the LiveU encoders, but it's got many advantages over Zoom, Skype, and whatnot. And basically it gives you a little more control than what the multifunctionals Skype and Zoom can do, where you can add a delay on feeds, you can control the iris, you can do things that makes it more broadcast quality. So essentially, over those 2 days, we split up our talent for our main host that we're getting a little more of a setup than the LiveU Smart, and then our guests where that we're going on the LiveU Smart app. So our our main host, we ended up going with LiveU 610s with cellular and internet. One of our challenges with this whole setup was all our talent are at home, right? So when they're at home, you got to deal with, we're based out of Chicago, and a lot of them live in these high-rise buildings that they have shared internet connections, which has been really a nightmare. But with the LiveU and the 610 with the HECV encoding and the cellular with 4G, we've been actually able to get around that. So we mainly, with the main host, have been using 4G with the HECV encoding. And then with our side hosts, we've been using the LiveU Smart app and with also the modem and the Wi-Fi. And I'll leave it with that right now. I can get into more details on other questions about editors and producers, but I'll just leave it at talent right now.
All right, thanks, Sean. Next up, Bob Gould with the Michigan State University School of Journalism.
Yeah, hello. I teach broadcast journalism at the School of Journalism at Michigan State. I'm an executive producer of a student newscast, and so it's been real challenging in the last month because we usually do a weekly newscast with our students with full complement in the studio. We actually have 2 studios we use, and as soon as we went to a virtual classroom, everything went online. We weren't able to use the studio. So it made it quite difficult for what we had to do. So we got creative. We wanted to use a LiveU, but because we couldn't even get into our studio, we couldn't use it for this. We had been using it quite extensively before we went online in the beginning of the semester through March 15th, I guess it was. But what we did was every crew had every student has a kit with iPhones and tripods and microphones. And they were able to go out and shoot some video, keeping social distancing, as best as they could. We, instead of doing a live to tape newscast, and the thing is, we did 3 newscasts. The last one was today. And instead of, doing a live to tape, if you will, we wound up pre-recording everything and making it look live so that we could then stream it out live on the Friday morning at 11:30 like we normally do. So we use a Teradek and my laptop to just stream it right out from my laptop at my house. Basically, it was all post-produced ahead of time. So it was kind of interesting how we had to go through, and each week the restrictions got tighter in Michigan. Actually, we had students all over the country, but the restrictions got tighter, and the university said, don't encourage them to go out. Please discourage them to shoot. So we did a lot of Zoom interviews, and the students were able to have their interviews. Subjects provide them video. They would give them some guidelines to shoot some video for their stories. And we were able to produce 3 almost 30-minute newscasts. So it turned out pretty good considering we were hoping to have a lot more use of other equipment and technology, but because we're all basically at home, we couldn't really do a whole lot. But we got a lot of compliments on, and I've been trying to see other newscasts from around the country, and I don't think anybody was really doing what we were doing on a I guess bi-weekly or bi-monthly basis. So
sounds good. Thanks, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, it's Brett Collins with BC Live Productions.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. I just wanted to, so basically what we've been doing is a combination. Really, it's a hybrid approach between having bonded cell, using people's Wi-Fi. You know, as Sean touched on before, the LiveU Solo is a great app for getting a little bit more juice out of a cell phone. But you know, a lot of these workflows are not necessarily new things. We've been doing these things for a long time, but now a lot of the network shows are now pivoting because they realize they have to be doing this remotely. So we're doing a lot of those, helping them get across that line, which is something they haven't really had to deal with before. So it's a combination. We use LiveU 600s. We'll also use low latency solutions like Zoom, so that producers can talk about the show in real time with that super low latency video conferencing feel, but still ingest the really high quality, you know, HEVC, high bandwidth stuff that we can get from LiveU. So, you know, we get the best of both worlds by doing that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brett. Before we go any further, I wanted to mention we're also joined by James Page from Vimeo and George Klippel from LiveU to help provide a more technical deep dive of the commentary. So let's get into the questions. I think we'll start with probably Bob. How is your production shifting during the current stay-at-home order?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, it's been challenging. You know, we for students, you know, we have three classes involved: a producing class, a reporting class, and then we have a production class. And the production class was really out of luck. They couldn't do a whole lot of anything, just because we were out of, you know, we couldn't be in the studio at all. But you know, our students really came through, and I was surprised because a lot of us figured they're just going to give up, but they really wanted to produce content, and you know, content is king. So as long as they had something to shoot with, and we said whatever they wanted to edit with, whether, I mean, some of them had Avid or Premiere, and some of them were using iMovie, whatever it was, we had them produce that content. We did have, because our LiveU we weren't able to use it, the PBS station that's located in our building is still on the air, and they do a weekly public affairs political program, and the host wound up using the LiveU, and he's still using it in his house, so it's set up there for him to use, which you know, the show's been on for 50 years with the same host, so it's good that they haven't been able to, and especially in the political climate, they've still been able to produce content. So a lot of shifting, you know, social distancing was important, and the university really stressed that. So our goal was just to make sure that we were able to produce content and get something on the air for not only for the audience that watches, but then our students to have a meaningful experience in the classroom, even though things were sort of turned upside down. So yeah, it's been interesting, I'll tell you. And there's other platforms we're exploring too, but we can get into that in a little bit.
Sounds good. Same question for Sean. Sean, I think you're still muted.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Sure. How is your production shifting during the current stay-at-home order?
Yes, so our production has shifted a ton. We have 50 people total plus talents, around 75 people working on our network on a day-to-day basis. Currently, in our office, we have 4 people in the office on a day-to-day basis. So we went from 75 people in our office to now 4 people. In those 4 people, there's 2 engineers, there's an A1, and then there's an A2. Everybody else is working remotely. So that's a huge shift for us. Let's talk about the stages. The stages, of course, were the talent going home. I kind of already talked about that. We used the LiveU approach, also with the LiveU Smart app. That's pretty much already been discussed. Editors, getting the editors at home, it was not really challenging for us because we already had a nice MAM system that we already shared all our stuff with. So we had a system, it's called Portal. We upload all our videos to that every day, and they're able to send stuff to our video server. So basically, editors the next day were at home sending us the thousands of clips we already have in our database for the shows every day. Editors weren't that big of a deal. Producers now, that was a whole re-engineering the whole place, trying to figure out how is somebody going to produce from home. Well, one of our first things is the multi-viewer. If you look behind me, actually, that's coming from Skype, and that is actually our Skype multi-view of what we send to our producers every day. So we actually, on our Carbonite, we have all our main sources on the right multi-viewer, where you'll see the 4 live views, the 4 Skypes, and so we have some charts and other stuff that we cut together, and that's basically what we send the producer. Now that's how they see what we're broadcasting, but how do they actually talk to us? That was a whole nother challenge. We at first tried to just do a phone conference call every day, and we fast realized that wasn't going to work for us. So we ended up going with an app called Unity, and I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's a very good intercom app. And basically on the app, it has 6 groups similar to an RTS panel, and you can assign those 6 groups to be IFBs and or PL lines. So on this Unity app, I have it hooked up through our Corona system, and I basically discovered this app on 10 a.m. and then we had it installed by 1 p.m. During the live broadcast and sorts and whatnot. But basically this app, they're able to talk to the control room, talk to the talent through IFB, all from at home. So producers, again, was solved easily with Skype, with the multi-viewer and this Unity app. So the next problem was, of course, our directors, our video operators. How do we get them at home? That again was another challenge for us. So basically, we had a lot of meetings with our directors, and we ended up coming to a solution where we're using Ross Dashboard through our Carbonite, and they built all the custom controls on the dashboard interface, and they're remoting into Dashboard and are able to cut the show remotely. Everything you're seeing done behind me with the lower third and the double boxes and the wipes, that is all being cut remotely through Dashboard. So that worked out really well. So our directors are at home using Dashboard, seeing the multi-view, and using Unity. And then that basically, that was the producers, that were the editors, that was the talents, and they're all working from home now. And again, like I said at the start, we only have 4 people in our office now: our 2 engineers and our 2 audio people.
Awesome, thanks, Sean. Brett, I don't recognize you without your mask. What you been doing?
Honestly, there's so many similarities between what we're doing and what Sean just said. So I feel like most of my answer would just be repetitive. But I'd like to talk just anecdotally. When I started out, it was a lot of doing every single job yourself. It's just you're learning on for me, a lot of it was on a TriCaster, right? So I was handling audio and playback and all that sort of stuff. And some of this sort of felt like a return to that, because we're having to consolidate a lot of jobs. But by passing things out and doing things remotely, we are able to bring a lot of the control room elements back into the show. As Sean mentioned, that we're using a very similar. He's using Skype for the multi-viewer. We use Zoom for the multi-viewer. We're able to send program down there as well. So when I was saying before about low latency, we also have a separate Zoom room set up so that the EP can talk to talent on one of these shows. Very similar workflow with once the show is ingested on cards, then once it's recorded onto cards, we're handing them over to editorial to ingest for. They're all working on Avid Media Composer for this particular show we're doing, and they're able to work again from home using that. Avid's got an implementation of the Teradici protocol, which is super low latency remote editing. So they're able to without ever having even a system, a powerful system at home, they can remote in and cut the show. So
something they've never done before, and it's working incredibly well. So the implementation, yeah, so far so good. But everyone's super thrilled about it, and I think that this really changes the way that they're looking at things. I don't think necessarily just for this moment in time, but moving forward, I think that a lot of the networks are seeing advantages in this sort of workflow because it really does save a lot of costs, and the results that they're getting are incredible. So, I mean, I think that this is really, for as much as there's so much about this that sucks, there's some things that are really pushing the industry forward, where people would have been reluctant to try these things before, now they're being forced to. And those sort of changes are, I think they're going to stay. So I think as far as the way that we are changing what we're doing, it's a lot more of what we were doing before and a lot further down the track. But a lot of these remote workflows we have been doing for some time because we've had to connect up corporations before that have multinational, so they have offices in different countries, and we've been bringing people into conferences that way for some time. And we send out kits, and they're able to set up slightly better quality than that you'd get out of a webcam. And if we send a nicer mic, we can send a better camera, and we've really focused on that DIY aspect. So when they get the kit, they can set it up themselves. They get a couple of little lights. A lot of times when we're doing these Skype calls in general, Skype, Zoom, whatever the protocol is or the platform is, one of the biggest things that we've run into is audio problems. Like people have really crappy microphones, or they're sitting in front of a window and totally blown out. Just all of those little things. So we can send out these little kits to help get them over the line. And I think it's a change of thinking for them, and everybody's really seeing the benefits of it.
Excellent. So we'll start with Brett on this one and work back around the horn. How's Master Control operating with social distancing measures? Has the layout and how the team operates changed with all of this?
Absolutely. So it's obviously with social distancing in place, one thing means that just for the sake of safety, there's a lot fewer people in the control room. And that as we implement more remote workflows, that's becoming less and less. But where we do have to have a core team in a master control room for a bigger show, everything's obviously a lot more spread out. There's fewer people in there. So, I guess one of the good things is if you've worked in a truck, everyone's sort of on top of each other a lot of the time. So this is the exact opposite of that, and it's sort of nice to be able to stretch out. But I will say that it's not without its challenges, but I think that the solutions that we have in place have made it really viable. And master control feels a little more barren, but it's just as effective.
Sean, anything to add on that?
Yeah, truthfully, our master control hasn't changed much because we had a cloud-based master control before using Verizon Digital Media as a CDN, and we're an OTT network, so we were already in the cloud, and basically all our stitching between live and VOD happened in the cloud. So really, we changed much with that. So not really much because of COVID with changes in our master control. Now our control room, like I discussed, we went from having 9 people to 1 person, but not much more than what I already said.
Awesome. James, how do you think master control's changed?
It depends on whether you had the capability to do it in the cloud, as Sean said before, or not, right? I mean, I've been preaching like remote workflows for 10 years now, as most of us on this call have. Usually it's been down to economics or logistics as to why people do a remote workflow. But now, everybody's been thrust into this world through no choice of their own, right? So we're all in, as Brett said, we've been doing these workflows for years and evangelizing the need to decentralize. We at Vimeo do an all-hands meeting in New York City, and 500 people in the office. We have international, people all around the world, and it's a full production, E&G cameras, full audio board, switcher, LED walls. And in the kind of like drink your own champagne kind of way, we've completely switched to doing it all remote. So scaling it has been the challenge. And I know a lot of our clients on the enterprise platform, that's why they go to enterprises, because Zoom's great for doing, a dozen collaborators, but when your audience is in the hundreds or thousands, that's where like cloud platforms like Vimeo Enterprise come in. And so we've used this kind of hybrid approach where we're using Zoom for things like Zoom for like the interactivity between guests, or remote interviewer, which we have on our software, and then going off to the cloud for distribution. But what's interesting is once you get it out to distribution, you have that extra step that you can start doing production. So we do like lower third graphics and stuff in the cloud now, which means the guys running our Q&A, moderation, graphics, all that kind of stuff can all be disparately spread across the globe just in a different browser. So master control is no longer the two-stripe for us. It's just different tabs in Chrome.
And Bob, I'm assuming based upon what you said before, most of the master control doesn't really exist. Students are kind of dispersed already.
Yeah, I mean, everything we do is online, so there's really no master control for what we do. I mean, we have the public TV station at MSU, which does their master control, and I'm guessing, they're already somewhat of a bare bones operation, so I'd imagine that there are very few people in the building working from there. But I did want to just make one comment to what Brett said, if that's okay, in the previous question, and he talked about, trying to make it professional, setting the light kits and microphones and audio. And that was one thing we really wanted to stress with the students. We don't want the audience to know that we're using iPhones and $20 lavalier mics and desk lamps. We really wanted to make sure that the students look professional, and if they're doing a stand-up in their house, that there was clean in the background, and that we didn't see their bedroom with a messy bed or goofy things on the walls and that sort of thing. So it was really important for us to do that. And then the other thing too is, one thing that I think is nice is that with experimentation, we're all experimenting now and doing different things. And one thing nice in the educational aspect of things is that we've always been able to experiment, because we're not really, there's nothing to lose or gain. In our situation, it's not a monetary thing, or we're not, it's all a laboratory, if you will. So it's interesting now to see the professional organizations, even when you're watching late night television, and they're all doing stuff that they've never done before, to see how things evolve and experimenting with new things. So I think it's really a positive step in trying to just evolve and like you said, being forced to do these sorts of things.
Awesome. And speaking of new things, George, what are your thoughts on 5G, and how do you think it's going to change this industry, and how soon?
Yeah, well, 5G, I mean, when people usually ask me about 5G, they're typically asking me, will they no longer need to bond anything, right? That's the biggest thing that they mean when they ask that question. And, I think that's not going to be the case right off the bat. You're going to need bonding no matter what going into a 5G space. But, 5G is going to be able to enable a lot of new features for us. It's going to give us lower latency, et cetera. It's going to, think about it from an at-home production standpoint, 32 audio channels, more two-way communication, everything remote control of more devices, right? So it's going to be a huge thing for us. The key is when does it get here, right? That's the other thing. Right now, if you believe all the marketing hype from all the carriers, it's here today. It really isn't. It's going to be, sub 6 gigahertz 5G in some cases is already supported, but the question is about millimeter wave, and there's all of this other tech that has to go on, building the towers, et cetera. So most people are still looking at the end of 2020 into 2021 before 5G is really out there and available all over, where you can use it, anytime that you want. The way that LiveU is approaching this is we're looking at having a hybrid approach where you'll have 5G modems intermixed with 4G and 5G modems that'll be able to convert into 4G when they're unable to get a signal that's 5G, right? Or be in a situation maybe where you're in a walled environment where 5G can't even break through, and 4G will be able to be used. But I think it's going to give us a lot better quality. It's going to give us a lot better latency and those types of things, but I still think we're quite a ways off from it becoming deployable in a bonded cellular sense and in a true sense of getting it out into the public and getting it out into these types of systems that you see and what we're talking about today.
And one of the cool things I've always seen with 5G is, it's cellular. We don't have to worry about going down to one pipe out to the internet. Everybody can just go. And the connectivity is not based upon my own, the size of the connection I've got to the outside. Any other thoughts on 5G from anyone on the panel?
I'd love to touch on that if possible. Just to circle back to what George was saying, the hybrid approach is really the only way to go for us, because there's just it's not versatile otherwise. There's too many places that you go where maybe there's even a momentary dropout of one of the, even if it is a strong signal, you see that a certain connection gets taxed for whatever reason. And it's important to have that failover. Like we're sending bonded cell out to even these little kits that we'll send out, just because we need that that confidence that our talent's going to make it through, and that we're not going to have them drop out for any period of time. So I think that the bonding is essential in that sense. So yeah, we leverage that a lot with what we're doing.
Yeah, to back you up on that, Brett, I mean, it's good production kind of set of rules to live by. Is no single point of failure, right? And I think a lot of people are seeing 5G as this kind of like silver bullet to, we can get rid of a satellite truck, we can get rid of our BGAN terminals, we can get rid of our encoders. It's like, yeah, probably 90% of the time, but the 10% of the time that you really need to rely on it is going to be you're in the middle of a Super Bowl, a hurricane, and there's some situation where the comms are going to be down for reasons, and you're going to have backup. We saw this when LTE came out. I was a startup 9 or 10 years ago when LTE first came out, and we were doing a lot of the MMJs who were trying to just be a complete news crew with an iPad. And it worked a lot of the time, except for those situations where they really needed it. That's always the way it goes. So a great backup tool, but I think in terms of keeping up with the needs of production, 5G bandwidth and latency far exceeds what we need in terms of like TV production, even in UHD. The bandwidth is far superior. The codecs have caught up. So we're in one of those, I think 5G is going to be one of those rare circumstances where network communications capabilities actually superseded what we really need for production. And I'm sure production will come up with ways to use it, whether that's multi-angles coming back from the feed or something else.
Yeah, I think just to dovetail off of that too, it's really it's going to be about rollout schedules. It's going to be about, the availability of frequencies. So I think from our perspective, bonding is going to be needed for years to come, and it's going to follow just like our friend James just said. I mean, it's really going to follow the LTE track for scheduling and rollout and how it came out. So bonding is going to be needed for years to come to get over some of these challenges, and it just doesn't go away. But that's the first thing when somebody says, hey, what about 5G? You going to have 5G? As soon as we get that, we don't have to bond anymore. It's just be one modem, and we'll be doing, perfect stream with no bonding necessary anymore. But that's
there's a reason why 747s only need one engine, but they have four, right?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think one of the long-term impacts of 5G will be REMI solutions, and there's going to be more of a at-home production that we're kind of doing now. And I think the impacts of doing sports, all the cameras, going back to a home base, getting cut there, all the audio getting, fed on that LiveU or DJero, everything's being home-based, and that could be now done on the fiber connection. It could be done on 5G. I think that is the future, and I think everybody in a set truck or anybody in a production truck, on the venue, I think in 5 to 10 years from now is going to be a thing of the past, unfortunately.
Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, right? But yeah, no, I think you're right there too. I mean, for REMI and at home, and in particular in sports, I mean, absolutely, sports is going to gravitate to this in a quick way. I think they're going to be the earliest adopters of this technology. I mean, we did a massive undertaking with 5G with NBA over the summer leagues, and partnered up with AT&T and used their 5G phones and did all of the summer league basketball tournaments with them, and that rollout was just amazing how they did that. And we produced it all on our LU smartphones. It was so cool to watch how they had these really cool camera rigs that were, shoulder mounted camera rigs, like a traditional ENG camera, and on the front of it was just this really neat AT&T mobile phone with 5G modems built in, and they had a whole arena set up with 5G cell towers built in to cover this summer league. It was, obviously a really controlled environment, but it was the wave of the future, right? Where the NBA wants to put fans, right into the court, if you will. They saw all of their, courtside seat people streaming all the time, holding their own phones out there and going Facebook Live. And they said, hey, why aren't we doing this, right? So we've partnered with them to do that type of technology display, if you will, and demo. And I see that as the future, and for sure sports and at-home production, as you mentioned, Sean, and the REMI is going to be quick to go in that direction for sure.
Excellent. So on the front end technology, and this is for everybody, what are the tools that you think are making the world of live production more accessible to businesses and individuals today?
I mean, without a doubt, the explosion of Zoom and Skype since this industry's changed as a result of the crisis is pushing people in that direction. I think a lot of people that never really considered doing meetings and presentations and everything this way has skyrocketed. And, like I said before, I don't think it's ever, it'll go back. It's not going to go back. A lot of things are going to stay this way. Obviously, when we're talking about anything mission critical, then we come back to the bonding elements of connectivity has to be bulletproof for a lot of these things. And I think we'll see the miniaturization of a lot of production things as well. Like, that we're seeing a lot more tiny lights now that have a lot of output, that, a lot of small, cheap mics that are coming out that sound a lot better. So like all the big professional tools are sort of getting miniaturized, and for a vast majority of implementations, they're great.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'll add to that is one of the major takeaways that we've got is, I talked earlier how we had the two main groups with our talent. Half of them are on the LiveU Smart, and then the other half are on the camera. And if you asked our audience or you were watching us, I don't think you guys would know the difference between who's on the professional camera and who's on LiveU Smart. And I think that's something to say about the future and how it's going to be a lot cheaper to do stuff. People are going to be using iPhones, and I know that hates some of the tech people to say that that people are going to be using iPhones. You still have to, of course, light it the right way. You still have to use the proper mics. But the fact that these apps are able to produce the quality and control as a professional camera, I think is going to just impact the industry, long term ahead.
I think you're absolutely right, Sean. I think that from a high level, the way I look at it is the tools and the means that we have to consume content are now the tools and the means that we can create content with. So, people were watching late night on their phones or laptops or iPads, and now late night's using phones, tablets, and iPads to make late night. So the snake has eaten its tail. And I did want to kind of ask the panel a personal question, which is, some of the live productions for late night have still used professional cameras, professional lighting at home, and they've done a really good job of trying to keep the same look. Some of them, it literally looks like they've just duct taped their phone to something in their home office. Do you think there is some resistance in the production community to this new tech? And let's not make it look too good, because we'll never get back to spending thousands of dollars on cameras and lights again.
I would say, from the experience that we've had with the network shows that are taping right now, there's still an attraction, right? Because there is still a gap between the small portable tools that people have and the really nice cameras. But even the nice cameras you are miniaturizing. So, for some of these shows, we'll have one of Sony's PTZ cameras, which are full frame sensors. We can control them remotely, but they are still more expensive than an iPhone. But they do look a lot nicer, and I think that there's an attraction to that. And I always like to see something with where they've taken time to really add some production value to their shoot, because I don't know, it just subconsciously I think that does something. If it looks nice and it sounds really nice, then it just seems like it's been taken more seriously.
Yeah, I'll agree with that too. Is that I think right now people are watching at home and they see, okay, we're all right with this because this is what it is at the moment. But I think you'll grow tired of the production value, if you will, because I mean, how much can, if you don't see the lighting and we have these 65-inch TV screens now. A lot of folks are consuming in mobile and laptops, but people are still buying large screen TVs. And I think at some point the quality, eventually it's going to get there where these cheaper options are pretty, the differences are more negligible. But I think right now, I think there's still that attraction to that high-end production. I would hope so anyway. From being a production guy and just appreciating good quality, output, even just watching the late night shows, there's clearly a difference when you're looking at some of this stuff and some of it where the audio isn't very good. That to me is hard. You just can't and that's why, again, we stress that with our students is that if the audio is not good and if it looks dark or you're up against shooting against a window, it just doesn't work. You have to make it look okay. Look better than okay. It has to look like it's ready to air. So yeah, I think that's a good question, and one that I'm hopeful that there won't be pushback. There will be some productions that you can do with the cheaper quality product.
Hey Bob, I just wanted to. I think that you hit the nail on the head when talking about screen size too, because when people are consuming on phones and iPads, the quality difference isn't as noticeable. But we're talking about network television, and most of that is consumed, a lot of it's consumed on big screen devices, and I think that's where the cheaper stuff, at least at the moment, starts to fall apart. So, yeah, that's where I'd see the biggest difference.
And the other piece I'm seeing is you'll see a show start out and it looks like, I'm chatting with my sister about her kids. And then a couple days later, it's looking more professional. So basically, folks are realizing, yes, we can still get the message across, but we don't have to necessarily sacrifice all the quality to get there. And we can just, kind of bring up the technology and bring up the quality as we go.
Yeah, if I can jump in here too, because I think, one of the things I've noticed in the last month and a half, at least from my perspective at LiveU, is that people who would not use this technology before are running to this technology today, and they're running it at all levels, whether it's the high-end levels like the LU600s or LU Smart. And the key thing is that we've made the technology, especially on the LU Smart, when people first deployed it, a lot of people today who've been forced to go home, unlike Sean, he's got a skeleton crew that are there to run things, right? But a lot of these corporations who need to get the word out to their employees and what have you, want to use these, cellular apps or what have you, don't have the technical know-how that Sean does or his team does or Bob's team does or Brett's teams does. And so, some of the things that we're doing as an organization is coming up with, we have something now that we call guest interview, right? Where you can have zero technical knowledge, and within your LiveU world, you can push a button in LiveU Central is what we call it, and set up guest interview, which really takes over the entire process, send somebody an SMS message. You don't even have to have the app loaded on the phone, and they can actually, the app can be downloaded, it can be all set up for them, and all they have to do is plug in a mic and they'll have IFB and be able to do the interview right over the phone. It's amazing how it looks. And Jeff, if you don't mind me doing something here just to test the technology out, I want to show something to the group and share the screen here. This is one of the differences that you were talking about, or Sean alluded to briefly, if you could see my screen, this is CNBC, right? This is the main difference between where somebody is using these smart apps in conjunction with the higher end apps. So in this case, you've got the main CNBC anchor right here using the highest end unit we have, the LU600, right? And it's connected to Ethernet, and it's connected with the modems in his home office. And the quad boxes here are all smart apps coming off their cell phones, right? And these all quad boxes going back to the server, doing an at-home production that Sean was describing briefly. But you can see very clearly when this guy comes up here in a second, I'll just scrub it along for the sake of time. But when this guy tosses from his LU600 perfectly lit, right, you can see the image is great. But now it goes to a single box with the guy in his smartphone. In just a second, you'll see him do his cutaway. And it's a great image coming off of his phone. And all it's doing is bonding the Wi-Fi here, right? But that's the quality that you get today. So it's really come a long way from where it used to be. So I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen over just the last month and a half. How many people are, rushing to get the tech out, even if it's lower end, but the quality of the lower end has come a long, long way from where, it used to be. So.
And I think one of the advantages of the smart app right now is everybody wants to have that professional camera with the talents and whatnot. But right now, we're not allowed to have tech people with our talent. So unless it's a PDZ camera, which we're using, but then you're still dealing with the audio board or a mic, most people are familiar with the smartphone. So with 35 talent like I was dealing with, we had to go to the smartphone app. Most people are familiar with the iPhone. They're familiar with how to use Bluetooth devices. They're familiar with how to use the mic. Using, the LiveU Smart, and as he just mentioned, the guest app has been a game changer. We used to use Skype all the time, and now the LiveU guest is basically replaced that, because we can just send them a text message. They get the app, and now they're on our show within 4 minutes. It's quite amazing.
Awesome. So now time for a quick lightning round, 1 minute each. So what do you say the basic things you need are for remote production? Let's start with you, Bob.
Basic things. Wow. Again, you need good audio, like I mentioned before, some sort of lighting, some sort of camera that's going to give you a good image, a way to get it to the customer, or the viewer, whether that's a LiveU or any sort of stream or Zoom or Skype or Vimeo or whatever it might be, and then good content. I mean, you have to have good content to make it work. So, all those things, like I mentioned earlier, if you make it look professional, there's ways to do it with amateur equipment or low end equipment, if you know what I mean. So I think that's really the key, is to have this equipment so that it's ready to go. And being an early adopter is important. We were using iPhones and trying to do this stuff a couple of years ago, and now it paid off in a lot of ways. So I think that's really important, is to start delving into this stuff, because you never know. And we were really happy that we were able to produce content and do this sort of thing, where a lot of institutions were not.
And for students, baptism by fire.
That's true too.
Brett, what do you think?
Well, it's a difficult question, because to me it's a little bit open-ended. It's like saying, what do you need to have a house? It depends on what kind of house you're going to build. Right? There's a mansion and a studio apartment. So for us, like there's times when we need multiple cameras at the talent's location, and for that we need to send out a lot more information. The same basic elements are always going to be in play, as Bob said. So you need a camera, you need a light, you need some audio. And a lot of these things, you don't necessarily even need a light. If you're really going guerrilla, you could just use daylight. But it's, if you're trying to hit a certain level of production value. And I think that having an external mic that can get a good signal, having a little light kit, having a nice webcam even, we have a tool that can go live at any time. So there's in terms of the absolutely essential basics, that's all you need. But if you want to elevate a little bit more, then I think having these elements really will elevate the production. And then additionally, depending on how many sources you have, if you want to have playback, if you want to have interaction between guests, if you want to be able to switch between all of these cameras, then you're going to need some sort of switcher, whether it's physical, whether it's cloud-based, whether it's remote controlled, whatever it is. There's all the basic elements that you would need in regular production is still going to be in play. It's just a question of how you're augmenting them for this. And we've seen several different implementations of that and used them ourselves. So on the basic end, we're running a couple of these remote locations simultaneously and putting a switcher in and running some playback. In a more elaborate situation, we have many different remote installs and a larger control room, bigger audio board. It's just everything's scalable, but I think the same basic elements apply. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but that's my answer.
It is. James, what do you think?
Say, when you hear somebody say, rip up the rules of production, everything's new, it's not true. In fact, all the rules of production still apply, right? Practice, have content, good talent, good lighting, good audio, all the things that the guys have mentioned. It's just the means have changed, right? And my advice would be walk before you can run. Doing a well choreographed production with everybody remote is tough as it is. So keep it simple in the beginning and then add layers. And from my years of running around local TV news stations, at the end of every broadcast day, they'd have a meeting to discuss what went well and what they could change. And they have that meeting every day, despite being on air for like 50 years. So the rate that you're going to learn is going to be pretty intense. And don't be scared to try new stuff. But seek perfection, but be prepared to have some rough moments.
Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I basically, I mean, what everybody else said, I think is 100% correct. The lighting, the audio, I think to furthermore, just because what's going on, I wanted to just show something real quick. If you look at, I have some photos actually of our at-home productions. Oops, it's not, sorry. Here we go. So just quickly, I wanted to just show you how basic a setup could be and how quickly we were able to do some of these at-home production setups. We threw a light kit, and this was this talent that was broadcasting at his home the next day. This was all set up by him. Lighting, audio still important, obviously. But same thing with these guys. I think the creativity is what's changed the game with at home and, with COVID. I think, the stands, the lighting is still important with all this. And then as, things went on, we kind of went a little more professional with the PDZ camera, the LU2000s, the LU300s or 600s, the audio boards, having control of the cameras as things went on. But no, I think essentially, with the bare minimum, you still need to have, good audio, still good video. Because, watching some of the, I don't want to name names, but some of the live broadcasts out there with like the weather person off talent, off site, and their audio is going in and out. I think, at the end of the day, having crystal clear audio, I think, is so important. You can get away with the visuals being a little off, but if you can't understand what the talent's saying, I think, that is, at the end of the day, you're trying to get a message across. If you can't hear the talent, you're not going to be able to, viewers aren't going to stay and watch.
That's true. George, any last thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think everybody's points are well taken. James, walk before you run. And, Bob and Sean just mentioned, my perspective, I always try to go with audio and lighting first as two of the big key things. If you can't hear them, you're really out of luck. And but yeah, everybody said everything I would say, so nothing else to add.
Sounds great. So thanks to LiveU and to Vimeo for sponsoring us today. And thanks for everyone dropping by to talk about live production, at-home production for live events. It's, I'm Jeff with KeyCode Media, and thanks for everyone for taking the time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone.